Okay, I want to take another look at another chess game. Again, this isn't really a brilliancy on my part, but I think it is kind of an educational game. Let me find it here real quick. There it is. Alright, we'll back up to the beginning real quick. Alright, and I'm black, obviously. This is a 3-minute game, so, it's probably not the perfect move. So, right off the bat here, we see a Sicilian defense, and that's what I really like about it. It's one of my favorite defenses. White, pawn to king 4 does kind of the normal, trying to claim the center, especially this square. But black, instead of playing the normal pawn to king 4, decides we're going to mix it up a little and kind of come around the side. This is kind of a flank attack. Right, you're coming up the side and really kind of claiming this square. And the idea here is it's a hyper-modern defense, as it's called, as opposed to a classical with the normal pawn to king 4. So, black is coming around the side and will try to control the center eventually by attacking from the side. But so that'll get us started. Sicilian defense. I play this defense predominantly. All right, so that's normal. White plays knight to f3, knight to king bishop 3, whatever. That's normal. He's trying to develop, trying to get his pieces out. And now black's going to play pawn to queen 3. That supports the original pawn. It also opens up this light squared bishop. It's the most common move. It prevents white from just bringing his pawn straight down the board with no, confrontation. What's the word I'm looking for? With no defense, I guess. So anyway, I want to get lost in the syntax of it. So white plays. This is common. White strikes at the center with pawn to queen 4. This also opens up the game for white. White can't afford to let black get too far down the board. So this is called an open Sicilian. When white plays this move and comes up here, because this is going to lead to an exchange of these pawns, and then this will be opened up here, and it'll open the game up here. These rectangles will be open files. But sometimes white will just play his pawn to right here on d3, and that's called a closed Sicilian. That's a whole different ball game. But so pawn to queen 4, and then pawn captures pawn. That's what was black's idea, right? Was to kind of fight for the center by using his side pawns, and then he retains his 2 central pawns. White's going to recapture with the knight. This is all standard. It usually happens almost instantaneously on the board. But so now you can see from black's point of view, hey, I got 2 central pawns. I've opened up some spaces for my pieces, but let's play knight to king bishop 3. Okay, let's start to get my pieces developed. And this knight can't be kicked because of you remember my second move was right here. So if I hadn't moved that, then white could just move his pawn right here, and this knight would have to move. So by playing pawn to queen 3, I prevent that. So that's normal. That's normal. Of course, you want to put your knights out early in the game. Knight to queen bishop 3. So now black's got some decisions. There's a lot of different kinds of Sicilians. The variation I prefer is this one with pawn to queen's rook 3 or a6. This is called a Najdorf Sicilian. I'll spell that real quick. Najdorf. That's just the name of the guy who made it popular. He was a Argentinian grandmaster named Miguel Najdorf, but that's not important. This is just a variation of Sicilian that I play, and one of the purposes of this move is because you can see I've opened things up over here, but I've also kind of got a route here towards my king that if you don't prevent, white can play this move right away with his bishop, and that's a check. And then you maybe you don't have a pawn there to block it anymore, so you maybe got to block it with either your bishop or your knight, and then that enables white to kind of gain the advantage. It's playable, but I prefer to play this move, this Najdorf move, and kind of hold these white pieces at bay a little bit. So bishop to c4, that's a pretty common move, and I'm going to answer that with e6. All right, that gives my dark squared bishop a square to go to so that I can get him out of my way and I can castle. And it also puts 2 pawns here in the line of the bishop, because with just 1 pawn, that bishop's really eyeing the f7 square, which is one of the weakest squares on the board in the beginning of the game. So I play this e6 move, and I'm getting ready to castle. Let's get that off here real quick. Well, I really gotta learn to make this thing work. All right. So white. Now here's this move is kind of important because it depends on where white's going to commit this dark squared bishop or what's he going to do. So white comes out here, bishop to g5. That's a pretty normal move. I mean, obviously it pins the knight. All right, so I got to get that knight out of there, or unpin the knight, or you know, something along that effect. But what it also does is it commits this bishop, you know, and what it you know, like every other move, it does something strong and it probably does something weak. And what it has done is weakened this pawn. So we'll keep an eye on that pawn. It's also kind of weakened this diagonal here because this bishop is now kind of committed in this direction. So keep that in mind. All right, it's my move. Bishop to e7. That's normal. Blocks the pin. Gets me ready to castle. And white plays queen to d3. That's a little out of character. Queen to d2 would probably be a little more normal. But anyway, queen to d3. That's a little out of character, but I wouldn't say it's unplayable. So now it's my turn. And I'm going to get my queen out. All right, now I just talked about how this bishop move has kind of weakened this diagonal. So I'm going to take advantage of that and bring my queen out. And now this knight is pinned. And I like that, all right? That knight is one of the defenders of the king's pawn. All right, this knight is one of the defenders of this pawn. So this pawn is starting to become weak, and of course that's white's central pawn. But so this piece is pinned. All right, now black could back up, but then he kind of wasted a move. So that's kind of the idea I'm looking at. And also, I shouldn't. Also, what I like about this move is it could be kind of sneaky because, boom, this bishop is not guarded. So if white doesn't, what he should probably play is f4. All right, but if white doesn't do that, he's got to be careful or he's going to lose his bishop. So he's got a pin going on here. I've attacked this piece. I've got my queen moved out. You know, things are looking pretty good for black. I mean, it's not a one game or anything. It's probably still considered pretty much equal by the computer. All right, so, but white makes a mistake here. He castles to get away from the pin. And then, as I just talked about, he's left his bishop hanging. Boom. All right, so you might technically say, I just want a piece for nothing, game over. Well, you know, the hardest game to win is a one game. But that's definitely a big advantage, right? White made a mistake there, and now I want a bishop. And f4, that's a pretty good move. But what does come into play later on is now I've taken that bishop out right over here. So now these dark squares on the board become kind of weak for white because he no longer has a dark squared bishop, but I do. So we'll try to take advantage of that if we can. All right. So f4, I'm going to run away back to queen to a5. I'm headed back there. There's probably a couple other places I could have go, but that one's as good as any. White plays knight to b3. He attacks my queen, but you know, I just want a piece, so I don't mind just kind of backing completely up where I came from. In retrospect, probably queen to c7 would have been a better move. I probably could have rested my queen right here, but I don't think my move was too bad. I just went back to where I came from. All right, so it's white's turn, and rook to f3. I really don't think that's a very good move. I guess he's got intentions of maybe, you know, moving the rook over here and you know, starting to attack the king. There's pieces that do have a lot of lines to the king, but I'm not a big fan of that move. So it's my turn. I actually make a blunder here. I make a mistake. I believe I could play this move, and this bishop has nowhere to go. I could have won this bishop, but I didn't quite see that because it's a fast game. And so I castle, which, you know, really isn't a bad move. I still have the threat of the move I just talked about. And white moves his queen out of the way, probably because he sees the move that I missed. And it's my turn. Let's get my other piece out there. Knight to, what is that, c6. Now the knight is starting to control the center. And you can see that, you know, black, this knight controls this central square and this central square. The pawn controls this central square, and this pawn controls this central square. This knight controls a couple squares. The queen's backing it up. I mean, black has a pretty good grip on the center, but you know, white's got a pretty decent grip on it himself. So the game's definitely not over yet, but I am up a bishop, so that's a good thing. So, oh, this is a pretty good move. White lines his rook up against my queen. And so now I kick this bishop away with b5. The bishop backs up, and it's my turn again. I try to bounce this knight in here. What I'm looking at is that pawn. My plan was kind of to take this pawn and at the same time threaten the queen. So, that's what I got in mind. I also need to get this bishop here on one of these two squares to try to get it off the back rank. All right, so that's my move, and white protects with the rook. I suppose that's playable, and now I move that bishop. I fianchetto that bishop onto the b7 square. So now that starts to put a lot of pressure on this guy. All right, he's protected, but still, now I've got two of my pieces bearing down on this guy. All right, it's white's move. He moves his rook over. He's probably trying to attack me or sacrifice something. I'm not as concerned about that. So I'm trying to kind of free up my game and strike at the center. d5. That's what I'm going to do. I don't know. This rook here is kind of bothering me, because I can't really move this pawn because the rook will be able to take my queen. So that does cause me a little bit of trouble. But by playing d5, I kind of start to free up my game. Now the bishop starts to have some scope, and this bishop's in the game, and maybe this rook will come over here real soon. So we'll see how it unfolds. All right. And white's got his own plan. It's not really a bad plan. He pushes that pawn. That's going to kick my knight out of the way. It's got to go somewhere. And where can I put this guy? Right there. All right. I'm really... this seems like a good plan, except I've still got the problem of this piece is pinned. So if he takes it, I'm really just going to kind of lose it. I probably should have played a better move. All right, but so he takes it. Now I do have one little resource at my command, I guess, is I can take this pawn. And when I do that, then he's going to have to retake with the rook here. Otherwise, he'll lose his queen. All right, so that's my plan, and that's exactly what's going to happen. All right, knight captures pawn, rook captures knight, right? Because if he doesn't, then he's going to lose his queen. All right, so rook captures knight, and then I can take this knight back. Somehow I lost in that exchange. If you look down here, you can see I'm only +1. Earlier, I had won the bishop, which put me at +3. But, I'm okay with this. I mean, I got a pretty good setup here. I've really busted up white's center. And what's really starting to catch my attention is the king and the queen. If I can put my bishop right there, then this will win the queen, because the queen won't be able to move, right? It'll be pinned. So it's my move. No, it's his move. So he moves his knight back here. He wants to get rid of that pawn. I don't blame him. All right, so now I slide my rook over to the open file to challenge this open file. And he captures, and then I capture. And this is getting juicy because I am really just wanting to play this move. If I can just play this move, it's game over. Because remember, white has lost his dark squared bishop. So he has all these, weakened dark squares, but I've got a dark square bishop, so I can kind of use that to my advantage. All right, and he captures that pawn. All right, so that kind of hinders my plan for the moment, because I can't put my bishop here. I also just take it. I don't want that to happen. So we got to try to get rid of that knight, and we do. We'll kick it out with this pawn. Now, white, in my opinion, should probably have captured this pawn en passant, and then I could have moved my bishop here, and that was kind of what I thought would happen, and then I would just have the control of this strong diagonal here, maybe get my rook over here, and try to still play this little tricky move. But anyway, let's see. I'm pretty sure that's what the computer recommends. Yeah, if you look up here, knight to d6. So the computer recommends that white play this move. I suppose that's a pretty decent move. But white doesn't play that move. He misses it. So I kicked the knight, and he just actually backs the knight up. So he could have maybe found a little more aggressive move. Like I said, he should have bounced this knight into the d6 square. And so now he moves the knight, and now it's, it's crying time. Bam. So bishop to c5, and now the queen is pinned. That's pretty much it. And white resigns there because he knows he's going to lose his queen. But some things to look at is that dark square weakness. I was able to exploit it. You see all these weak dark squares, and white has no dark squared bishop, which I got by, getting that queen out and getting sneaky over there and taking advantage of the fact that he, played that bishop up there early in the game. But this is still a pretty good setup. I got the bishop pair, and it was a pretty good game overall. But anyway, I just wanted to take a quick look at that. And maybe we'll back it up real quick without too much commentary from me. We'll see it again. Sicilian defense, normal, 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 normal. Open Sicilian, normal, normal. That's a Najdorf Sicilian. That's pretty normal. I think that's called the Fischer-Sozin attack. And this is a E6, and to block that. And right there, I don't really think that's a bad move, but he doesn't follow it up well. That move might not have been so good. Queen to d2 would have been a better move. Had he played the queen just up here, then, if you remember when I bring my queen over here and I slide over here and take it, I couldn't have slidden, I don't think that's the word, I could not have slid over here to take the bishop if his queen were on this square, because of course the queen would protect it. Now my drawings are getting kind of sloppy. So, queen to d3, that's kind of an ugly looking move. So queen to a5, and then he castles, and then he gives that piece up. f4, that's not too bad, but again, he's lost his dark squared bishop, and now by moving this pawn, he's really got a lot of weaknesses coming in here, and as you can remember, that's what we end up taking advantage of. And it's my move back, queen to a5. He drives it away. Back to home plate there. Rook to f3. I don't know, maybe that's a little premature. I castle. Queen to whatever that is, e3. I'm not real sure what he was thinking there. Here comes my knight. This is a pretty good move by white. He lines up against my queen. That's always a good idea. And I kick this bishop away. And, now the bishop, that's not really a bad square, but he's really kind of blocked in. And here comes a knight, kind of threatening to take this pawn. And the rook protects it. And then I get my bishop in the game, and I'm starting to put a lot of pressure on the e4 square there. And white's trying to get an offensive together. And then I hit the center, and white kicks my knight. All right. And there's a little exchange. And then you can remember I'm really trying to get this bishop on that square. Let's get the rook there. Rook captures rook. Queen captures rook. And then the knight comes in, and I'll kick the knight away. And now that just sets the stage for the final move, which is the bishop, which is going to pin the queen, and black and white's going to resign. So hopefully that was somewhat entertaining or educational, either one. And I don't know, maybe we'll make some more chess videos today.